Hello, it's the 18th of June and today I want to talk about pollination in greenhouses or anywhere where insects perhaps can't so easily get to plants to pollinate them. In the greenhouse this year I've got 8 varieties of tomatoes, I've got 2 varieties of peppers, 2 varieties of aubergines, and behind me 2 varieties of cantaloupe melons. And in terms of pollination, they form 2 distinct groups. The melons stand on their own, and the aubergines, the bell peppers and the tomatoes fall into a group known as nightshade. And the thing about nightshade is they have what's often referred to as perfect flowers, which means that the pollen producing part of the flower, the stamens and the stigma, which is the part of the female plant structure that the pollen has to reach in order to produce a fruit, they're all in the same flower. The peppers and the aubergines aren't open yet, but here's a photograph of the tomato flower, and you can see the stamens and the stigma in the photograph, and that's pretty much the same in aubergines and bell peppers. So what I'll be saying about fertilizing those, fertilising the tomatoes also applies to the peppers and the aubergines. The melons are different. Each plant has 2 different flowers, male flowers and female flowers, and here's a photograph which illustrates the difference. You can see that if you look at the base of the flower underneath the petals, there's not a lot to see with the male flowers. The female flowers have a bulge there, and that's what will turn into the fruit. And so the melons are slightly harder to fertilise because the pollen has to get from one flower to another flower. It can be on the same plant. They don't have to have 2 different plants to pollinate. In relation to the tomatoes, the green peppers and the aubergines, I don't give pollination in the greenhouse a great deal of thought. They don't seem to have any problem in pollinating. What you can do, what some people do, is give them a bit of a shake around as the pollen and from the stamens and the stigma are in the same flower. They pollinate themselves pretty easily, so I tend to ignore them most of the time, but as you're walking past or as you're side shooting or whatever, you keep moves them about, and I think that deals quite satisfactorily with the pollination. Just by way of demonstration, if you were going to pollinate by hand a flower such as the one on this tomato, and this applies to all nightshades, it applies to bell peppers, it applies to aubergines, it would apply to potatoes too if you were having seeds from them. Because the stamens and the stigma are on the same flower, what you would just do is give a good brush inside each flower like that, and then that would pollinate the flower, although as I say, with tomatoes I've never bothered and I've not had a problem. The melons are a different proposition. Here's a male flower. You can see the fairly small base underneath the
petals. And to get the pollen, just put in your paintbrush, and you don't need to be too gentle doing this, just to make like a bee. Now down here you can see a female flower, which is quite different. It's got this much larger bulbous element here, and then you take the pollen and put it into there so it ends up on the stigma of the female flower, and hopefully in due course the petals will now fade and this bulge here will turn into a cantaloupe melon.
Well, as ever, I hope you've found something useful or interesting in this video, and thank you very much for watching.